Okay. Hello. This is Hunter McDermott with another episode of Guitar Blog. This is episode 39. So, I have been learning a bunch of stuff about how to play bebop from multiple sources, but a lot of different people talking specifically about Barry Harris. I have talked about Barry Harris before. Working through some material from Ronnie Ben-Hur, from Chris Parks, from Things I've Learned from Barry Harris YouTube channel, which is fantastic, by the way. And I picked up a new book. It's an old book, but it's new to me. It's called How to Play Bebop by David Baker. It's kind of famous. And I did that because I wanted some more examples. One thing I really like about the Barry Harris method is the amount of freedom that it provides you. It's a very, very good system for explaining like jazz improvisation, I guess, and jazz harmony and stuff like that. So like I know theory, but like learning sort of the theory of bebop, I guess, would be a way to put it. Understanding the component parts that make it up. Why does it sound like it sounds? And if you want to sound like that, it's important to kind of understand what those atomic elements are. But one thing that I was finding challenging is just the amount of freedom it provides you, which is both wonderful and overwhelming. Feeling like, man, I could really do anything. What do I do? Is kind of where I ended up. So what I really needed was another piece to the puzzle, something to add on to the various stuff that I was doing, specifically around concrete examples. So here is a concept, and here are some examples of that concept in action, how you might use this stuff. So it's like, the way I'm thinking of it now is like I learned the music theory of jazz from Barry, and then I'm now trying to learn the vocabulary to go along with it. So people talk about how to learn jazz, how to learn improvisation. Do a lot of listening of recordings, which I have been doing and is very good for multiple reasons. One, you're getting the sound in your ear. Two, you're determining what music you like. There's a lot to jazz. It's a vast genre spanning a long period of time. So which aspects of it, which eras, which performers do you like and why? And then it's a pool to draw from when you want to learn vocabulary. Just like reading a book, reading poetry, you build your vocabulary, and through having conversations with people and things like that, you hear words, turns of phrase that you like. Whether you consciously do it or not, they start to show up in the way that you speak and the way that you write. Same thing here. And so that is happening. The more I listen and the more I just play, like I kind of pick up aspects of it, but I haven't really figured out how to add new vocabulary exactly. So what I've done this past week or two is I've been going to the book, the David Baker book, pulling out ideas and trying to put them specifically over a blues. So I'll show you what I've been doing. The tune I picked, not that it matters too much, is Blue Monk. That one. And I picked it because it's considered a jazz blues, I guess, because it's a jazz tune by a jazz guy. But it's like the most bare bones blues form you could do. So it's got the one chord to the four, back to the one for two measures, back to the four for two measures, back to one for two, to the five for two, back to the one for two. So it's very plain, And I picked that on purpose. You could certainly embellish it, adding 2/5s and turnarounds and all kinds of stuff. And a lot of the material that you play over top of it would also work. But I did that because I wanted just like long stretches of one chord that I could focus on writing material over. So I started with the root. Let's write a lick from the root. I wanted to write the lick from the root of each chord. So that's B flat, E flat, and F in this example. So the David Baker stuff, it's all Barry Harris. Like Barry Harris has already said all of this stuff as far as like the material. Like here's David Baker would call it the bebop scale. Barry Harris doesn't like to use that term because it's just a scale with added chromatic notes, and there are a lot of different notes you can add. There's not just the one, though that one's prevalent. So then David Baker shows off this lick, this ending he calls it, which is I think sort of infamous for coming from this book, or I don't think he created the lick, but he codified it, and it goes like this. When you get to the flat 7 after you're walking down or from wherever, you go to the 9 or the 2, back down to the 3rd or to the 6, and then to the 5. So then, taking that to E flat. All right, but then that works over any measure that's got one measure long chord of one measure. When we get to measure 3, we've got 2 measures of B flat. So to extend it, I throw in some more stuff from David Baker. So that he calls a deflection. As a way to just delay the resolution of the line. Bebop, of course, is all about rhythm. It's about making things fit rhythmically with the phrases. That's where even the name bebop it comes from the bebop, 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 bebop kind of cadence that it sort of has, this sort of rhythm. So it doesn't even really matter in a lot of cases what you play, so long as you end up in a nice place, so that it resolves in a pleasing way. So he calls this a deflection, which is the flat 5 there. And then he does this thing. I can't remember which example he shows this off. That's just like a little piece of vocabulary. I don't know that that's called anything. It's just a neat sounding thing. So putting all that together, we got this descending dominant scale with chromatic notes added to his little ending lick, to a deflection, and then a little piece of vocabulary. And so that's cool because it starts on the root of the chord and it ends on the 3rd of the chord. And you can apply that to the E flat as well. And to the F. All right, so if I put that over the whole thing, let's see, I've got iReal here. All right, let's put that over the tune. Okay, so that's the first step. Just write some material and work it out over the whole tune. Now, let's do that from the 3rd. So writing a lick from the 3rd of each chord. So just trying out different techniques that I picked up from Barry, from David Baker, from all kinds of different sources. And then combining that with stuff that I just think sounds cool that might pop up. So from the 3rd, I decided to do an arpeggio, which tends to fall back down to the root of the chord. So I end up on the B flat there. And Now, of course, once I reach that point, I can then descend the scale, throwing that chromatic note in there. And I just thought I would keep it simple and run the scale. Just run the scale from top to bottom. From E flat, and from F. So here it is. Alright, let me try that. I forgot the first two measures are 1 bar each. So you truncate it. And now you do the whole thing. Okay, so now from the 5th, continuing to explore some different ideas. This one's also kind of simple, or kind of plain rather. So we start from the 5th, then we jump up, we do an octave displacement. What note is this? So we're starting on the 5th, and then we're jumping up an octave to the 4th. So it's kind of like we're descending from the 5 to the 4, but instead of going down directly to the next note, we go up an octave to that note. Same note, just an octave higher. And what that does is it allows you to play a line, hop up, and then basically continue the line from where you left off, because eventually you're going to run out of room on your instrument. So we do an octave displacement, we jump up, and then we walk down the scale. And then when I get down close to the 3rd, in order to make it, fit and to add some interest, I throw a little enclosure in there. So I want to land on the 3rd. So when I get down, I play the note above the 3rd, the note below, and then I land on the 3rd. That kind of thing. From E flat, and from F. Here it is. And so finally, we've done the root 3rd, 5th. Let's do the flat 7. Here's where things start to get interesting for me personally. So I wanted to do something a little different. I'm doing these kind of like 8th note lines so far. They're all starting on the 1. I wanted to spice it up a little bit. And so that's good. Like I tried some things. I realized I was kind of falling into a pattern of doing sort of the same thing. So let's change it up. That's like having done those first 3, I now can like start to expand a little bit and get a little bit more creative. So from the flat 7, you can do an arpeggio as well. It's a major 7 arpeggio in this case. But I wanted to do it as a triplet, and I wanted to start on the and of 1. So that kind of thing. And then so that's similar kind of deal as this. Do the arpeggio, and then come down a note. And then I have this little enclosure here over what would be the 3rd of the chord, which naturally kind of, my ear pulls me back to the root, and then from the root, of course, we can do, throw that little David Baker thing in, walk down the scale. So from each of the chords. All right, so let's see how that sounds. Okay, so here's where things get interesting, more interesting. So now, to take it out of the blues, you could stay there and mess around with that. But what I wanted to do is take it out of that context, because that was kind of just like for practice, and move it to another tune that I like that's not a blues. A tune called There Will Never Be Another You that I played on this channel before. Really like that one. That one. Now this one has a bunch of 2/5s in it. Now this was not intentional on my part. I did a B flat blues, which gave me gave me 4 licks over 3 different chords each, 12 different things basically, that happened to be E flat 7, B flat 7, and F7. 3 of which of those, all 3 of those appear in this tune. 2/5s with those dominant chords as the centerpiece. And then on top of that, we have a minor 2/5 from D minor 7 flat 5 to G7 flat 9. I was talking to a friend of mine who helped me understand how to take a lick that I already like and move it into take like a major 2/5 lick and move it to a minor. So in that case, what you would do is you can do this in either way. I have a 2/5 and I want to put one of my licks to that. So a minor 2/5. I want to take a major 2/5 and move it to minor. So I have to kind of go in reverse from minor. The relative major would be F minor. The relative, I don't know what the correct terminology is. Doing like a relative minor thing, going up instead of down. So F minor 7 to B flat 7 is sort of the relative of D minor 7 flat 5 to G7 flat 9. So if I take that 2/5 lick that I use over B flat 7, theoretically it will work or can work over this as well. So that'll actually work over this 2/5, this minor 2/5 in G. So, or C minor. All right, so now I've got a tune with a bunch of 2/5s in it, and I've got a bunch of material, and I want to just take this lick, the last one we did, and apply it to the tune. Everywhere where we don't have those 2/5s, I'm going to just improvise over that chord, however I might normally do it. And then whenever I've got those 2/5s, I'm going to force this lick in there, play it, verbatim if I can. So let's hear how that sounds. I'll play over maybe 1 or 2 times through the hit. Let me bring the tempo down. Okay, here we go. So that's neat. All right, so now I've taken this thing that's like totally contrived, and I'm trying to uncontrive it by forcing it in, or I am contriving it. I'm forcing it into this tune, but in an effort to link it or connect it or blend it in with stuff that I might otherwise do. So it's not just the lick the whole time, though it is in a lot of cases. So this is another thing that I got from my buddy that I also saw again recently with a guy named Cecil Alexander. The idea that you take material like this that you're working on and force it into a tune in this way in order to practice it, right? So that it comes out being musical. So the idea is, and again, I heard this from my friend originally, just take a tune and improvise over it. But when you get to that chord change where you're trying to work on the lick, play the lick exactly the same way every single time. And then Cecil expands this by saying, try taking, improvising and then playing the first half of the lick verbatim and improvising the second half, or improvise the first half and play the second half verbatim, or whatever. And then work on specifically how to move into and out of the lick in a creative way. So it doesn't sound like you're playing and stopping and then playing the lick and then stopping and then going back to improvising or whatever. You know, it flows more naturally. But anyway, so this is huge for me because the thing that I've been missing is people say, listen to recordings, transcribe, learn things in all 12 keys, whatever. I think that's all good stuff, but the whole like how do you take any of that information and incorporate it into your playing? How do you absorb it outside of just, you know, whatever happens naturally through listening? And I think this is the thing. So in the future, I'm just taking licks that I'm reading off a piece of paper in a book, which is, you know, not the hippest way to do it. But I'm seeing now that the pattern, the process rather, is listen to tunes, go, hey, I really like this monk tune. Why do I like this monk tune? Let's transcribe it or find a transcription or whatever. Find a lick in there that I really like, something that speaks to me, learn it, take the Barry Harris stuff that I've learned and sort of analyze it. The analysis part I think is important because then you start to identify elements that you like. So it's like, oh, this lick has a diminished arpeggio in it, and I like this lick, so therefore I must like this diminished arpeggio thing. So maybe I'll work on diminished arpeggios more so that I can get that sound that I like into my playing. So having that ability to analyze things and say, there's an enclosure, I like that, or here's this deflection or whatever, is really cool. So I think it's important to identify things that you like, gravitate to, so that you can sound more like you want to sound. Rather than just going like, well, I have to learn everything. No, just learn the things that you like. So then to take that, analyze it, and then know how to force it into my playing and work on it in this way that is also playing music. Like I'm still working on soloing over this tune, which will always make me better. But then now I have this piece of material that I can throw in. And then on top of that, there's just being creative and also kind of like embracing making mistakes. So in one case, like I might, and I definitely did this, is like I was trying to play this F7 lick, which I need to work on, but I kept going instead of the 7 there, I was going up to the... So when I mess up, I'm trying to go... and instead I go, which is a whole different thing, and it doesn't spark the same like pathways in my brain that the actual lick does. So then I tend to go off in a different direction, and I don't know what that direction is going to be. So by messing up the lick, I'm also being creative with it, figuring out where I'm going to go, you know, on the spot, being in, you know, true improvisation. And then the other thing is, through practicing this stuff, seeing how some of these things can connect. So if I take the lick, I was ending it there, but I could do the deflection thing, that, which extends the lick, but now I've ended up on this third, so I could do the lick from the third. So we could do this. which lands me on the fifth, which has its own stuff if I'm going to continue doing that. Here's a cool thing to go from B flat to E flat. Or whatever. That's that diminished arpeggio thing that I'm starting to learn about. But yeah, then you could do, instead of doing it like that, we could start the same way. Whatever, I'm just messing around, but that's the kind of thing, is like I'm starting to get this stuff under my fingers and into my ears to where I can pivot at these different spots when I get to a chord tone, and I'm not thinking about it so much like, oh, I'm going to walk down this many notes to this spot and then I'm going to do this. It's like through all this repetition, that'll just happen kind of automatically. I'll hear it, because I don't have time to think. I'll hear that I'm landing on a chord tone or whatever. I won't think of it that way, but I'll hear that I'm landing on a certain sound where I know I can pivot off in this other direction and start to combine these different techniques, octave displacement, arpeggios, the chromatic notes, the enclosures, all this kind of stuff. So it's all kind of coming together. And it's exciting because it's both the freedom, I feel free to do a lot of stuff that Barry Harris has taught me to do. Here's this, don't worry so much about what everything's called and whatever, but you've got this freedom here, all these opportunities, all these possibilities rather. But then having some having some stuff that I've worked out that is coming from me, or is, coming from a book, but being jumbled through me and coming out in a spontaneous way. And like, that's it. I've completed the loop of understanding how you go from listening to jazz and liking it all these years to then going so far away from the joy of the music and going, picking up the instrument and learning a bunch of theory and doing a bunch of drop two exercises and stuff, all of which was good to do, but felt like was wildly disconnected from the music. And now I'm starting to figure out how to work on stuff in a musical way, so that connection, that those two things are a little bit closer together. And then you're there. Then you play at a jam or whatever, and this stuff just comes out. You can be creative and have that leeway. So that's cool. I recommend checking out a channel called Things I've Learned from Barry Harris. Chris Parks, I think, does a fantastic job of explaining a lot of Barry's concepts. And if you're a guitar player, then it's perfect, because he is. Barry's a piano player, so having Chris to translate some of that stuff onto the guitar specifically is really, really helpful. And he's just a nice dude who explains things very clearly. But then checking out, some of the other Barry materials, I think this bebop book from David Baker is really nice. And then just practicing this type of thing. Listen to something you like, pick out a part that you like, analyze it, and then force it into your practice, and then play. Cool. So that's it for this week. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.